just like to welcome everybody to the Benson High Class of 67 50th year reunion. And I hope everybody's had a great night so far. Obviously, we're not going to start the program before you eat, but we are going to have an invocation by Scott Darling before you eat, so welcome him to the podium.
Lucky wants to.
Let us bow our heads.
Is that right?
Gracious God, with this reunion upon us, we are reminded how fortunate we are to be here tonight and share this time together, renewing old friendships, making new ones, and sharing memories of 50 years ago. We also tonight remember those who are not with us, the classmates who couldn't attend, and especially those who have passed away. Most recently this past week, Patty Bailey Burke and Sammy Bell's husband of 48 years, Mike McKay. Looking back over these past years, life has brought us many opportunities, challenges, some hard times, sad times, many good times, and great times, all of which have made us who we are and taken us where we are today. And from these last 5 decades, we ask that you help us to remember most the many blessings we have received, and especially for each coming day, that we are blessed to remember how blessed we are. Yes, it makes a very good day when we are blessed to remember how blessed we are. We give thanks for this meal tonight as nourishment for our strength and our spirit. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Class reunion. That memorial disc was prepared by John Roeder with Roeder Mortuary, and it was Craig Roeder's brother. So I want to thank John for that. He spent quite a bit of time. He worked with us on it, and I appreciate his effort. I know what. I'll start crying. It's tough to look at that stuff. And,
Get your mouth much closer.
I know. It's tough to look at that stuff because every time I see a picture, I can remember one little thing about every one of the students. And it's, I'm sorry, but it's tough. So I understand. I hope you feel the same way. So, anyway, I'd like to propose a toast tonight. And the toast tonight I want to make to the people that served in the military. And we have a number of people that served in Vietnam. I know a lot of their parents served in World War I and World War II. We have children that are in the military. It's easy for us to sit around sometimes at home and try to figure out which channel we're going to watch on TV when we have young men and women serving. They're in foxholes, or in mountains, or in desert environments, and they're in harm's way. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody that's ever served in the military. Right now, I'm guessing half the room's saying, who's he and why is he at the podium? The other half of the room saying, I remember him and why is he at the podium? So tonight, I'm going to reveal a secret that I've had for 50 years. And it's true. And Scott Swanson told me it was time for me to come out of the closet. And the truth is that I was Stu Hallgren's body double in high school. So every time Roger Sorensen called to play and he knew he was going to get the slobber knocked out of him, he invited me to take his place. When he went to Cornhusker Boys State, everybody was saying, Stu Hallgren, he's everywhere. Well, obviously there's two of us. So anyway, I called up Stu and just asked if it would be okay if I kind of filled in for him tonight. So I'm just go in your pajamas, go sit on the couch, get some popcorn, watch a good Netflix movie. He said, cool, so now you know why I'm here and why I'm at the podium. And I know what the next question is. You're saying, so what does Stu look like today? Well, obviously, duh. He's 5'7", 160, has gray hair, has a wicked sense of humor, and still handsome. So anyway, as a reunion committee, we've been doing this now for almost a year and a half. I think we sent out a survey back in October of 2016, something like that. And actually what you're seeing tonight is the results of what we received back in that survey. You know, how much you want for a meal, where you want to go. We like to have everything downtown because we're close to the airport. And good thing is we have actually 27 states are being represented here tonight. So it's quite amazing. Mike Swanson couldn't make it. Unfortunately, he had to turn his corporate jet around and go back to Seattle. He's coming from Hawaii. So he did send me a picture of him holding a beer in Seattle. So saying cheers to everybody. The one thing we didn't do yesterday was announce the flag prizes of the golf tournament. So I'm going to announce those tonight. Longest drive was Gray Carlberg. Shortest drive was Gray Carlberg. Longest putt was Gray Carlberg, and closest in 3 was Gray Carlberg. So, congratulations to Gray. You did a great job of organizing the event. I know I receive an enormous amount of praise and thank you for what I've done for the reunion committee, but you have to understand it's not me. There's no way you could have planned this type of event with one person or 2 people or 3 people. It takes a team of people to make this happen. And so I'm going to introduce everybody that's been involved with the reunion committee over the past year and a half. Basically, we have kind of a 3 people packed as a co-chairman. We have Scott Darling, who, if you ever received an email, it's perfectly punctuated, grammar's perfect, the content's perfect. That came from Scott. If you received an email that looks like a ransom note, that came from me. And John McCandless, who is the treasurer, he's the only guy I know who can keep $4.51 in a checking account for 5 years. And it's still worth $4.51, no bank charges. So, amazing. So I have to give him credit for that. So thank you for that. Also on the committee we had Norm Anderson, Jay Buckley, Patty Bailey Burke was part of it, Gray Carlberg, Jim Douglas, Dave Philippi, Gene Graves, Steve Gunderson, Stu Hallgren, which I guess I'm here tonight, Steve Hayes, Sandy Olson, Alexo, Paul Herrick, Bill Huntington, Linda Lochner, Ingerson, Dave Carnes, Lynn Orsi Krause, Candy Ty McDermott, Sammy Bell McKay, Linda Hitt McLaughlin, Dan Miller, Jim Miller, Dana Kessler Richmond, Kathy Degenhart Rocco, Bruce Rohde, Laurie Saxton, Barbo and Scanlon, Scott Swanson, and Linda Decker Whiteside. They really deserve a big hand. They worked hard to make this. So we also had a team what we call special consultants. That was, they go by the name Silver Hairs. They produced all the decorations for us last night at 1000 Dodge Street. You just see the table settings and everything. They really worked hard to get those done. They did like 60 bottles of decoration. For the green shirts, I think that's the repeat. I think so. Anyway, that was Kathy Bachman Thomas, Judy Pinkerton Hicks, Rita Schultz Johnson, and Marilyn Lou Smith. If they raise their hands. So the ones in the green. Yeah. So we found them when Jay Buckley was out on a scouting mission for eating barbecue pork one night. He ran into these 4 women with Benson shirts on, all kinds of Benson paraphernalia. He goes over and talks to them and finds out they graduated with us. So we said, well, they have to be part of the reunion committee. There's no way we're not going to make them part of the reunion committee. So they actually meet twice a year, once in August at Mahoney State Park. They rent a cabin. They turn it into green. I mean, there's more bunnies and more green than you've ever seen in your life. And then they also do it once again on Halloween at the same place. So anyway, if they give me an email, I'll send it out to everybody. You're more than welcome to go out there and visit. Tonight we have some special guests. We have some teachers who are actually at Benson High School when we were there. We have Clyde Lincoln and his wife Velma. They're up here at the front table. We have Larry and Smith and his wife Judy. So far I never got in trouble with those two. The next one's Fred Parcelli and his wife Jean. Just in your honor tonight, I wore a belt, and I had a but the real question is, what the heck ever happened to all those ropes? You must have had a bunch of them retire, right?
Yeah, you had to pay for it. I think it was a quarter.
Quarter, yeah, something like that.
That's a lot of money then.
So anyway, we invited Larry Smith to speak, and I think he have a couple words to say for our class.
I'm going to key in on the couple because I got 2 or 3 phone calls from their classmates, starting with Buckley, so I immediately hung the phone up. Then it was Buckley again, so I had to talk with him for a little bit. And then the Honorable David Carnes called and left a message, and he's the most subtle guy who's twisted the arms to attend things like this that I've heard in a long, long time. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm kind of like this gentleman to my right. Half of you over there don't know who I am. The other half over here may remember who I was. I was in Benson 2 years. So I got to tell you, 48 years I was teaching, coaching, counseling, administering, college teaching, etc. Those 2 years at Benson were the best 2 years that I had in those 48 years. I got to work with a kind of a stoic gentleman named Howard Sorensen. But underneath that veneer there was a soft cookie, let me tell you. He never made one decision. The few times he included me in making decisions, that wasn't for the betterment of those students in this high school. He loved that school. The reason the school in the 60s, 65, 66, 67, was outstanding. You're sitting out there right now. You had the best academics. You had fair to moderate athletics. And if you look around the room, you carry over those achievements and your initiative and your club joining, your activities you participated in into your life, your vocation. Whatever you're doing, I know damn sure is constructive and helpful and successful. That's what really made Benson High School, for the most part, quality high school it was. I'm hurrying here now. So we got sometimes we overlook a few things. I've had the pleasure tonight of sitting next to who I call the Benson legend, Fred Parcelli, who has scored so many points with so many kids. He's just an outstanding man, but he made his mark at Benson. And I've been reviewing for about the past 6 weeks your yearbook. I go through the faculty list. There are those faculty members that are still alive and kicking today. And I know when you go home, wherever home is, I'm asking you to pull your book and go through there and see if you can identify a teacher, a coach, a counselor that had some impact upon your life that helped for your later years. And then I'm asking you to do one other thing. Google them, find them, and write them a note. Because they were coupled with you to make that high school so successful in those years. I have one gripe tonight, and then I'm done. When you do get your Voyager at home, I want you to turn to page 123. And you all remember that. Now get on page 123. I'm serious. And I'd like to call up one of the co-editors, or both if they're here, Sally Fredrickson, whatever your last name is now. Is Sally around here anywhere? She's not here. She's not here. How about Jeff Evangelista? Where is he? Come on. And you better have your belt on.
Okay, I'll pay the fine.
That's enough. I just Larry Smith. Sure. I was talking with Fred at dinner, and Fred would play quarters, as you remember. He had $200 in quarters sitting in his office, which he delivered, planning to deliver to the library. Fred collected with a cause, and he walked in his office one day and it was gone. So he upped the ante. He was going to move it to 50 cents, but Howard said, no way. So on page 123, this is the last little bit of my part. I want you to read, Jeffer, what that says with this damn dummy sitting in my office at Benson High School. What does it say?
Who says Mr. Smith is a dummy? And that's without glasses.
We're going to read. I've carried this with me for 50 years. I want you to read that out loud now.
Yes. Mr. Smith is not a dummy.
Thank you very much.
I will.
So anyway, at this time I'd also like to pose a second toast tonight, make a second toast, and that's to all the teachers, past teachers, teachers that graduated from our class, who dedicated their lives for teaching our children, grandchildren. I mean, I think the best thing I heard today at lunch is what teacher inspired you. You know, it was really amazing some of the answers we heard. And almost everybody in that room that had that lunch had a special teacher that inspired them to be better than what they could have been, helped make them a better person, guided their lives, sent them in a direction they probably never dreamt they were going to go. So I'd just like to say thank you to all the teachers in the room. We have another group of people I need to thank. Number one, we had a number of private donors that helped make this possible the last 2 days. That we raised a lot of money to help offset costs. We also had a campaign called 50-50, 50 people for $50, and that was very successful. So I'd just like to thank everybody for helping finance it, and we need to give them a thank you too. We did make 2 special donations this year. Number one was for Patty Bailey Burke, who was a member of the Union Committee, and she passed away on Tuesday or Monday. And as a committee, we elected to donate $250 to the Flamingos for Hope, the John Estabrook Cancer Center, Fort Methodist Hospital. So we donated that in her honor. And then the second donation we made was for $250 to the Benson High Scholarship Endowment Fund. That was in honor of Sammy Bell's request. She asked us she wanted this class to donate some money to something. And when it happened, when her husband passed away on Tuesday, we elected to do this to the Benson High Scholarship Fund. So it's kudos to the Reading Committee stepping up plate and making that happen. You don't want to forget Bill Solomon. I don't know, is he around? There you are. The guy just raised his hand. He's in charge of the pictures, the videos, the editing, I hope. So when I came to Benson, I came to the mothership. I came from Lewis and Clark Junior High. I was a trailblazer. They have a lot of them. So anyway, my first experience at Benson High School was going to Mr. Loren's homeroom class. And my life was devastated from that point on in high school. On the second day of his homeroom class, he goes, we need to elect a homeroom representative. So Mimi Lowe was nominated, I was nominated. Mr. Lorenz asked we both come up to the front of the room. So we marched up there and he goes, time to vote. I took one step forward and said, don't I get to make a speech? No, he goes, it's time to vote. So anyway, the vote came out. It was probably the most polarizing vote in Benson High history. 18 girls voted for Mimi, 16 boys voted for Roger. That's not bad enough. I'm still trying to find the damn Russians. And the worst problem is, if I just had 3 more hanging chads, I could have been a senator or a congressman or something. So anyway, my life was downhill from that point on in Benson High School. Which was the reason I was a class clown instead of a student. So I was actually reading through my yearbook, and obviously somebody didn't know how to spell because they said they enjoyed being in my physics class. F-I-S-S-I-C-S. Obviously they weren't the class valedictorian. Actually, we're blessed to have 3 speakers tonight. The first one is going to be Mary Cleveland. Mary is actually the class valedictorian along with Bob Andrel. She was actually number 1. I'd always like to think of myself as a distant number 2. But my mother actually told me that AT&T actually designated an area code in my honor. So anytime you dial 661, that's my class rank. Then we have Dave Barnes. I know many of you probably don't remember, but Dave was a sousaphone player in high school. So just out of curiosity, I Googled on the internet, and I discovered that 41.3% of both past and present United States senators played sousaphones. So apparently there's obviously a correlation there, so I'm hoping Dave can point that out to us. And I'm not smart in the ways of DC, so I don't know, but this is just a rumor right now, and conjecture. But the rumor is that Dave doesn't have 1, he doesn't have 2, but he actually has 3 John Philip Sousa albums on his iTunes account. So we're trying to see if he has a plausible denial for that. The third speaker is going to be Mr. Bill Huntington, who Dave describes, knows what I'm going to do before I do it, knows what I'm going to say before I say it, and knows what I'm going to think before I think it. I'm afraid I'm going to find out tonight that Bill Huntington was actually my second wife. So anyway, we had 2 drawings tonight. We have 2 contests in the buying the tickets. If you actually registered between July 17th and July 31st, your name was put in a hat to receive a $100 gift certificate. Well, we put names in the hat on our reunion committee meeting last Wednesday, and Doug Rothery won the $100. Is Doug around? Was he up? Anyway, here's a luncheon contest update. And then the second contest winner we had was if you everybody put their name in the hat, and we were thinking I pulled out when I got your tickets. Going to get your tickets reimbursed from the reunion committee. And the winner of that was Sally Frederickson Rowell, which I think Larry asked me for earlier, but unfortunately she has started chemo treatment last week and she's unable to attend. So anyway, John sent her a very nice letter. We refunded her money and we sent her regrets and hope to keep her in our thoughts and prayers in the future. So anyway, it's my honor. I get to introduce the first speaker, Mary Cleveland Hollinger. And she received a BA in French and English from the University of Kansas. Spent a year studying in Strasbourg and a fellowship from KU. Has an MA, PhD in French from Indiana University in Bloomington. That's where she met her husband, Roger. I think was working on his MBA at the time. Is that the way I heard the story? And her early career teaching full-time at college level, University of Texas, East Carolina, and later part-time in the Philadelphia area, Bromar College, which I think, where's Jim Miller? You're from that area, right, originally? The last 3 years, Mary was chair of the World Language Department and created an exchange program for the school in Normandy and retired in 2014. She's been married to Roger for 36 years, and that's an accomplishment in itself. So anyway, I'd like to welcome Mary to the podium and give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Roger. He was very persistent and finally persuaded me to take up this role again tonight after 50 years. So it's got to be better than it was 50 years ago because we were in the city auditorium, I don't know if you remember, and it was unair-conditioned, of course, and there were 5,000 people there. And on top of all that, Mrs. Stevens required us to memorize her speeches. Bob, I'm sure remembers that, Andrew, that we had to memorize every word. I don't think we even had notes. How I did that, I'll never know, but somehow I got through it. And I was very thankful that Roger tonight did not make me memorize my speech. So I said, okay, I'll do it. But Mrs. Stevens, she worked with us for hours on our delivery, and so we both got through it quite well. It's great to be back in Omaha and to see all of you. It's fun to reminisce. When I think back on my years in school, I always start with the exceptional education at Walnut Hill Elementary School. And I see the Walnut Hill contention over there. We had a wonderful time today having lunch together. I should also include Jim Douglas, our class treasurer, who was also from Walnut Hill. I can still remember all the excellent teachers I had at Walnut Hill, and still name them. Miss Davis, Mrs. Harris, Ms. Thompson, Mrs. Bunny, Mrs. Wynn, Mrs. Stevens, and Mrs. Hall. Walnut Hillers, remember some of those? I'm sure you probably do. So, 50 years ago at Benson High School, what were things like? I'm going to list some things that maybe you remember. Do you remember the purple dittos? That wonderful smell of the ditto, and purple hands. Encyclopedias, card catalogs, typewriters, those hideous baggy gym outfits that girls had to wear. Boys only interscholastic teams, letter sweaters, again for boys, pep club, passing notes, no phones anymore, reel-to-reel films, chalk, no air conditioning, girls in skirts, very crowded halls, and senior homeroom in the auditorium. I remember all of those things. We're talking about teachers. Who were your favorite teachers? I remember fondly Mrs. Stevens for her humanities class and the outstanding plays that she produced. She always chose serious plays, no fluff. American and British drama, Shakespeare, and even Greek plays. I did not participate in drama, but I never missed a play. How many of you had roles in plays or participated in stage crew? Raise your hand. Very good. Now another question. How many of you regularly attended the plays? Very good. And I also love the musicals, but Mrs. Stevens was not the sponsor of the musicals. I thought of Mrs. Stevens during our visit to Omaha Beach in Normandy. I remember that her husband died during the D-Day invasion, and I think she had visited also his grave. I also love some other classes. I love Mrs. Johnson's Honors English class, and my 4 years of Latin with Mr. Arns. I didn't actually have French in high school. I started it in college. The school was so crowded with us baby boomers, and having become a teacher, I really wondered how did those teachers manage those big classes and those crowded halls and keep us all under control? I marvel at that. My favorite activity was Benson High News. And I was thrilled to see that the placemats were pages from the Benson High News. I was a news editor senior year. Mr. Horn was our sponsor, of course. How many of you here worked on the Benson High News? Good. Okay. Mr. Horn taught us the principles of good journalistic writing, good leads, headlines, fact-checking, proofreading, and no cliches, please. You can Google Benson High News, and you can have a lot of fun looking at the archives. All the newspapers from our senior year are there, as well as many other years. You can learn and see why our newspaper won so many awards. So how about that speech 50 years ago? Obsessive organizer that I am, I did keep a copy. And I just wanted to review with you a little bit. The theme of the speech came out of a story that the late Dr. Harry Berg, superintendent of Omaha Public Schools, included in an article. And the story goes like this. Long ago, a dissatisfied man went down from Thessaly to Athens to seek the counsel of Socrates. Sir, he cried, I am a fool. For 30 years I have tried to build a Parthenon in Thessaly, and lo, I can manage only a mud hut. Take heart, my friend, said Socrates, for you are in a better case than most. Few enough even try to build a Parthenon, and of those the most build a mud hut, but take it for a Parthenon. The Thessalonians of heart returned home and built a temple for the ages. So the question is, did we build a mud hut or a temple for the ages with our lives? We have raised families, earned degrees in a variety of fields, achieved successful careers in many professions, volunteered, enjoyed sports and hobbies, traveled the world, endured setbacks and sorrows. We are still building, and that's the challenge for us. There's still time to finish the temple. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dave Karn, our class vice president. Dave holds degrees in political science and law from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. He is the head of governmental affairs practice for the Omaha-based national law firm Cusack Brock. He has also had a varied political career. He served as a White House Fellow in the Reagan administration. In 1987, he was appointed to the U.S. Senate following the death of the then U.S. Senator Ed Zarensky to fill the final 2 years of his term. Subsequently, he served in several presidential appointment positions. Dave has 4 grown daughters and 5 grandchildren. In 2008, he remarried to the former Chris Dorn, a lawyer and a Creighton Law professor. Dave and Chris have now added 2 more daughters to the Carnes clan of ladies. Kate is 6 and Alexandra is 4. Please welcome Dave Carnes.
Thanks, Mary. I appreciate the kind remarks that actually I wrote for you, so I appreciate that. I'd like to have all of you take a look at your program, if you could. I want to, and also your placemats. First of all, I want to thank Steve Hayes for the printing of our placemats. I thought it was a great idea, and also I think the program is really terrific. And there are 2 things I want to point out in the program. First of all, take a look at Howard Sorensen, and right to his right was one of our earlier speakers. So if you don't remember when he was up here speaking, maybe you'll remember that great picture of him with the powers that be at Benson High School from our yearbook. And I appreciate your recognition of Howard Sorensen. He was a great leader, and we had a great staff. And I thought it was really cool to put the senior leadership of the high school in there. Also above, you'll see that great picture of our class officers. And one of the things I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about the class officers and where they are. A lot of people have asked me about Stu and about Sammy and about Jim. Nobody asked about me, but nonetheless, I've been here, so that's... So let me just say, this is a little factual information. I contacted each of them, we've talked to them, and a little bit about our president, Stu Hallgren. He lives in Okemos, Michigan, which is about 4 miles from the campus of Michigan State. He graduated from UNL and got his PhD from Michigan State University. He worked for the state of Michigan for 25 years in the Office of Community Corrections. He retired and worked for the Michigan area bishop for the United Methodist Church, retiring in 2015. Stu has been married for 33 years, has 3 daughters, 2 grandchildren, and he says in his remarks, in retirement, I make sawdust while woodworking. I love gardening, volunteering, traveling with a constant goal of trying to learn new things. He enjoys playing his classic guitar, which others say he is abusing his classic guitar, according to his words. And he says, I feel deeply blessed with family and friends, and of course, none of this would have been possible without my 4 spectacular years at Benson High School. So that's from Stu, and he's doing well, and he lives in Michigan, but he regrets he couldn't be with us this evening. Also, Sammy Bell. Sammy was a great part of our class officer group, and as you heard, Sammy, husband Mark, of 48 years, passed away on Tuesday after a long fight with diabetes. She lives in Gary, Nebraska. She says she always wanted to be a doctor, but as a result, that didn't happen because kids came along, and she said that changed her plans. But for all of her professional career, she worked in hospitals. She has 3 granddaughters and 1 on the way. And I didn't remember that she was the oldest of 7 children in her family. And she has a passion which started early and continues to help needy children so that their dreams can come true. She really regrets not being here today, but she understands everybody knows when a health issue affects her family. And she would love to get a message from anybody. She's on Facebook and an active Facebook participant. She said, please encourage anybody that would like to reconnect with Sammy to give her a Facebook contact. Lastly, I talk about Jim Douglas. As you remember, Jim had a chance to date and then eventually married. He was a very lucky guy, Linda, and they've been married ever since. Jim graduated from the University of Iowa. He played football at Iowa. He has a degree in accounting. He then had a series of senior positions working for Union Pacific. He said he lived in Denver, Connecticut, New York City, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Richmond, Virginia, and then in 2004, he retired and moved to Columbus, Ohio, where they currently live with his two daughters and their family. And he very much regrets not being here this weekend, but he has a grandson that's playing in a state qualifying championship football game, and a daughter that's cheering for that, or a granddaughter that's cheering for that. So he said, I would be there, but for the fact that my family is supporting our family in the sports activities. So there's a couple things I want to reflect on. First of all, how many are here from Mount View School? Good. Well, there's a lot of great schools that fed into Benson, but in a vote I took just earlier this evening, Mount View was the best grade school I heard. So thank you for your support. Then also, let's see the hands of people that went to Monroe for 9th grade. For 9th grade. Okay, how about Benson for freshman year for 9th grade? Great. I was at Benson, and Monroe Mustangs were a great experience, but I was very lucky to get to Benson and be one of those 2,400 students at Benson that year. As a freshman, we got pushed around quite a bit. I remember homeroom. I remember, how many of you remember the bathroom doors in the main hall that actually opened out? Hopefully that's been changed. That's a liability issue that I now think about a lot. How many of you ladies, Mary mentioned earlier about your exercise uniforms. How about that great sport of cage ball that you guys had? Cage ball, remember that was as big as those tables that you guys had to push around? I have no idea who thought that was an athletic experience. I remember very fondly the Benson High News and Gunnar Horn. He was a great inspiration to me. I had the opportunity to be sports editor with a young man named Charlie Packard, who also sends his regards. He's a pastor outside of Dallas, Texas right now. And the other thing that I fondly remember is the marching band. I don't know how many of you are in the marching band here, or were in the music department. Well, if you remember, Mr. Green was our extraordinary marching band instructor. And our sophomore year in high school, the Benson High Band marched in the presidential parade in Washington, D.C. And it was quite an honor for all. So next, I'd like to introduce the next speaker. I'm really glad that he's here. His name's Bill Huntington. Now, before we get in, how many of you remember Bill Huntington? Everybody raise your hand, please, okay? Okay, there we go. All right. Well, Bill says after leaving the hallowed halls of Benson, he went on to get a bachelor's and master's degree at UNL. He also is a graduate of the National War College. He spent 36 years in the intelligence world as an Air Force officer and as a senior official in the Defense Intelligence Agency. He retired from the Air Force Reserve as a colonel in 2003, and then he went and worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency until he subsequently retired in 2010. He was the director at DIA of Human Intelligence and as the agency's deputy director. And in his own comments to me, he said, I know this surprises you that I would get involved in anything involving intelligence. He said that to me, Bill. You remember that? Yeah. Subsequently, Bill has worked as a consultant. He's a senior faculty member of the National Intelligence and Security Academy. He lives in Fredericksburg, Maryland, with his wife, a Benson High class of 1970 named Cheryl. They have 3 children and 5 grandchildren, and his passion has been studying the Civil War. And it's a great tribute to history, and I think, Bill, you can come up and no war stories this evening, but he's a speaker at our senior banquet. And how many of you remember Bill at our senior banquet? That's okay, great. Bill, come on up here and give us those remarks. A great speech at our senior banquet.
Dave, I want
principal speech, and when we're back here for our 75th anniversary, they say, does anybody remember Bill Huntington giving that one wonderful that we one lone person at the last meeting raised their hand. Well, the last time, as Dave indicated, the last time that I was able to make a few remarks was at our senior banquet, and I was chosen to say a few words about our senior year experiences. I had the privilege of following Jim Miller, Khaki Sports, and Libby Loring. Now that was a pretty hard act to follow. Fortunately, tonight I didn't have that kind of competition. You'll note if you look at that 67 yearbook that Mr. Smith had, that there's a goofy picture of me somewhere in that yearbook, standing behind the podium with my tie wrapped around the microphone and a Tootsie Pop in my hand. The only positive thing about that photo that I can say is that it is proof positive that once upon a time I did have hair on the top of my head. Now, I noted at that time that we were all suffering from a very mysterious ailment that was known as senioritis, but that it was thankfully not a fatal disease, and that it would soon pass and never return. Now, however, I'm sure that the term senioritis has taken on an entirely different meaning for us. And unfortunately, it would appear that I was mistaken, that senioritis can return, and in the end, is probably fatal. So who knew? And I'm sure there are many other phrases like that which have taken on new meaning for us. I was talking to Todd first last night, and I mentioned something about happy hour, and Todd thought I was talking about his nap time. One of the things that struck me as I looked out at all of you tonight was how I've managed to stay so incredibly young, and you've all got so incredibly old. And you know, I know this growing old can be very difficult. And you know you've reached a certain point in your life when the best thing that happens to you in a day is when you go to the grocery store to get beer and the grocery clerk actually asks for your driver's license. Just last week I picked up my 15-year-old granddaughter at high school, and my wife had turned to her and said, you know, your grandfather's going to be attending his 50th high school reunion. And she turned to me and she said, gosh, Grumps, I didn't think you were that old. You were really ancient. And it was like she'd never seen me before. It was like she totally evaluated, who and what I was, and it was impossible that somebody who was born before Harry Truman left the White House could possibly still be traveling on this route. At any rate, growing old is for other people, right? Right. Old is 10 years older than we are, and we're just going to go on forever, aren't we? Yes. Right. When Dave first asked me to say a few words at tonight's gala, I said, I've waited half a century to tell some of those people exactly what I thought. But Dave, being a wise politician, said, well, there are a lot of our classmates who could probably use some of that sage advice. He didn't say which classmates. And said it'd be a lot better if you just talked about some of your fondest memories at Benson High, and maybe something a little bit about what you've done in the last 50 years. And I thought about that, and I said, hell, I've tried to suppress all those memories. But there are a few things that do stand out in those, quote, unquote, happy days, like walking down the hall and listening to the melodic clang of Doc Sorensen taking some unruly student by the scruff of their neck and slamming them into a locker to make sure that they were paying attention to what he had to say. For those good old days when teachers could lay hands on students and they didn't get in trouble for it. How about that Friday night football stuff? It seemed that all those parochial schools were always our nemesis. I remember trying to get back to the parking lot after playing the semi-pro team out at Boys Town. It was always a challenge. Doing that without getting the crap beat out of you was tough. And it gave a whole new meaning to what was meant by the city of Little Me. And playing Creighton Prep was always a high point, depending on what the final score was. I remember that a band of vandals would sneak out the night before paint the Virgin Mary green in front of Great Prep, with a red lantern in her hand, but they always got revenge. I remember returning to the foyer of Benson High, and a bunch of old toilets were sitting in there before our sock hop. I don't know whether the Jesuits had anything to do with that. Doing dialogues with Ray Carlberg and Mrs. Kuhlman's German class was certainly one of my highlights. You guys remember Mrs. Kuhlman? How many of you remember Ray Carlberg? At any rate, I'm convinced that actually Greg learned most of his German watching episodes of Vulcan's Heroes on TV. And we'd have these dialogues. I always got stuck. I didn't get Dave. Of course, I always got Craig, and Craig never memorized any of the dialogues. I'd stand up there, and I'd ask him a question, and then he'd look at me with a stupid grin on his face. And then Mrs. Kuhlman in her high-pitched voice would say things like, Herr Carlberg, was ist los mit Sie? And he'd just still stand there with that dumb grin on his face. I started to feel like Charlie Brown, football, and Lucy, you know. So Greg, as most of you know, could run like the Dickens, but he wasn't very academically inclined. And when we were both at UNL, he would stop by and ask if he could review my notes from the geology classes that he had skipped. It was then that I understood why they call geology rocks for jocks. I don't want the teachers to listen to this part, but then there was the perennial problem of how to get your hands on booze. You needed to prepare properly for the King and Queen event, particularly if you weren't one of the athletes. I think I'll leave that memory alone because one of our suppliers is now an attorney, and I wouldn't want him to be disbarred for contributing to the delinquency of the minors. You know, that's one of those stories you never told your parents, and if your kids did, you'd kill them, right? And you know, if I ever needed a little muscle to put some bully in their place, of course we never had any bullies in the class of '67. I always had my friend Marty Kaufman. You're here tonight, aren't you, Marty? Yeah. Marty and I have known each other since his mom had been our den mother in Cub Scouts. And believe it or not, I was happy to find out that Marty's mom at 102 is still going strong. How appropriate that Coach Marty would mentor a whole generation of young people and be the dean of boys' behavioral problems at Westside for over 20 years. Now, I was too small to play football, particularly with guys like Marty Kaufman, maybe with Carnes. And I was too short to play basketball. And John Markey's dad, who was a great Little League coach and a professional baseball scout, had told me once that I would never be anything but a menace on the ball. But you know, I greatly admired those green letter sweaters that the athletes all had to wear. And when I found out that the debate team got a letter sweater, I said, hey, this is for me. Much to my dismay, I later learned that while their letter sweaters were green, ours were white. Wearing one was a badge of geekiness. That green letter was a mark of the nerd. The only saving grace was, as you remember, there was a hierarchy of nerds. And the debate guys were at the top because we got to travel, and every once in a while we got trophies. And then came the band guys. And you remember what, you know, they always said about band guys, used for birth control, their personalities. And at the bottom of that, of course, were the ROTC guys. Now, that doesn't count the people that were in the library club or the science fiction club. And we had some great teachers, didn't we? We did, huh? One of my favorites was Herb Penner, who was head of the math department. I was miserable in math. But Herb was very patient with me, and he always treated us a little bit like the adults we were becoming. He always treated all of our problems with a gentle sense of humor. But I always felt a little sorry for him because he would drive into the parking lot with his beat-up old green car that was about 15 years old and should have had antique license plates on it, as I recall. And I remember years later when he and I were commuting down to Lincoln for graduate school, he drove up the first day with a brand new Chrysler New Yorker. I was taken aback by this, and I said, Geez, Fred, what happened to the old? He said, oh, I still have it. He said, that's my sympathy card. I said, your sympathy card? He said, yeah. I said, I drive that to school every day, and when we negotiate with the school board for our pay increases, I drive it to those negotiating meetings because I don't want anybody to think that teachers get overpaid. So I hope that wherever Herb is in the cosmos, that he is still mentoring smart aleck kids, and that he's still pulling a fast one on the cosmic school. I was going to say a few words about Mr. Bean, chemistry. How many of you have Mr. Bean? Chemistry? But we're not going to talk about him today. I didn't learn much chemistry. Well, we all made friends and forged lasting relationships when we were at Benson High that we carried beyond graduation. I was a roommate with Harry Salyers for almost 3 years. We were indeed the odd couple, and I'll let you guess who was Felix and who was Oscar. And you know, having a roommate is a little like being married, but without any of the fringe benefits. And I remember that there were times that if I thought if he played that goddamn record, the Stone Ponies with Linda Ronstadt, beat of a different drummer one more time at 11 o'clock at night, I was going to break that record over his fat head. Well, it's a good thing that I didn't do that, because several years later, Dr. Salyers was doing some medical exchange work at Offutt Air Force Base, and he was there to deliver the first child of Lieutenant and Mrs. Huntington. And I remember a guy by the name of Dave Carnes. He would drop by our dorm room. We were the only goddamn independents that Ted Creek was willing to, many knew on campus. And he'd come to our place to crash after all the hazing we got during hell. You remember that, don't you? And Harry and I would kind of look at him, he was catching a few Z's after many days of hazing, and we'd look at him and say, this guy's pathetic. He's never going to amount to anything. And I think we're pretty close to right on that. And even though it shudders me to think about it, and I've kept it a secret from her for as long as I could, Gene Graves is actually the godfather of one of my children. And Gene, I understand you've done pretty well from those days when we used to tease you about what the odds were for a date in '68. At any rate, between my Air Force and civilian career, as Dave has indicated, I spent a little short of 40 years in the intelligence world, known as the world's second oldest profession. And that time span period everything from the fall of South Vietnam to the fall of the Wall of Berlin and the current conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Little did I know that my time at Benson High would help prepare me for the challenges in that shadow role. Tradecraft things like developing a foolproof cover story, or appearing to be somebody you weren't, or learning to manipulate people to do things they ordinarily didn't want to do. So I learned all those in the Hallett Halls. I must admit that those years were pretty interesting, but since you couldn't talk to anybody about it except the people you worked with, it made for a pretty dull dinner conversation most of the time. But I did get a chance to see the world, a lot of more glamorous places like London, Paris, Tokyo, Berlin, but there were a lot of places that weren't so exotic. Places like Ouagadougou. How many of you know where Ouagadougou is? Well, I'm not going to tell you. The jungles of Colombia, Guantanamo, as well as war-torn Afghanistan and Iraq. And I have to tell you that wherever I went in the world, one of the things I dreaded most was somebody bringing up the subject of high school mascots. Once the conversation got around to muscular rabbits, carrot tops, and bunny tails, I knew I was in for an incredible round of ridicule. The first reaction of people who heard of the mighty bunnies was one of disbelief, like you're pulling my leg. And once you had convinced them that my high school mascot really was indeed a bunny, the result was usually a hearty guffaw, and they just bent over laughing at my expense. So I got to tell you, you had to have a pretty thick hide to be a proud bunny in the world outside of Oakland. There are a lot of highs and lows in those almost 40 years. The highs mostly had to do with knowing that your work in some small measure may have helped keep the nation a little safer for that day. And there were also lows, like walking into the Pentagon the day after 9/11, knowing that some of your colleagues and friends had died in that place the day before. I will always remember the awful burnt smell of the place and the ashes everywhere and the haunted, shaken looks on everyone's faces. But there was also determination in those faces, that all those spoken said very loudly that we would never let something like that happen to us again. There were also more than a few chilling moments in all of that. I remember sitting in on an interrogation of a 19-year-old Al-Qaeda member who had been recruited from Canada and captured on the battlefield of Afghanistan, being interrogated in Guantanamo. And when his interrogator asked him the question, what would you do if we were to free you? And he said, I would kill as many Americans as I possibly could. So there were moments like that. I would like to close, however, by assuring Dave that those National Security Agency tapes of his conversations with certain Russian officials will never see the light of day. So I hope, Dave, that you'll sleep a little better tonight knowing that Bob Mueller is not going to be breathing down your neck. Thanks for having me tonight. Thanks for walking down memory lane with me. I think Roger now would like to get on to the business of introducing the band. I want you to know that he asked the band earlier whether or not they had anything that was appropriate for any of those of us with walkers, and they said yes, they would be happy to play. What was it?
And jive.
And jive. On request. Thanks, let's rock out. Okay. Just like one more hand for the speakers, Mary, Dave, and I'd also like to get one more time to thank the reunion committee for making this a great event. I know many of you don't know who I am, but I have some really snooty friends in the world. Actually, platinum level snooty friends. And they ask me, why do I do this? And the question is, I actually owe my success to everybody in this room. In some way, little form, but it's passed in the hallway, or took a class together, or we're the best friends in high school, so I forever thank you for that. I humbly stand before you to say thank you tonight for that. So.
Well, I'm going to butt in here for a second. I was asked by the reunion committee to speak, and I cringed to have to follow these speakers. So it's great to hear that. The comment is, this would not happen if we didn't have John McCandless, Scott Darling, and Roger Lindsay leading us. The rest of us are just helpers. These guys are truly the leaders, and we wouldn't be here tonight without them. Thank you.
I do have one more award to give out before I introduce the band. And this year the reunion committee has one final award. It's recognizing an individual or group who went way beyond the call of duty to make the reunion great. I know this is like, it was a Waterhouse, whatever, it brings our wings out. Okay, we're used to get a drum roll or anything?
Drum roll.
Hang on. You ready? Hang on. Thank you. All right. The winner of this year is the Silver Hairs, Rita Schultz-Johnson, Kathy Bachman-Thomas, Marilyn Lou Smith, and Judy Pinkerton. Okay, say one quick thing. We're going to take pictures of elementary schools. And I think the first group we're going to do is like through Adams and Walnut Hill. So if those group of kids want to kind of walk over here, when the band starts, we'll start taking pictures. Okay, so the last thing, the reunion committee is almost kind of like, reminds me of O.J. Simpson. You know, O.J. said he would spend the rest of his life to find out who killed his wife, Nicole. We spent 50 years trying to find the left bank. And we still haven't. We're going to have the best substitute and the Grease Band. Welcome to the Benson reunion.
Hey, thank you very much. The next place is supposed to play at your senior prom? Livestock Exchange Building, I believe, is that right?
Yeah.
We played that night, the Search a Hard Dance Band played that night.
That's right, him and Ricky back here.
Yeah, Ricky Reddy.
Yeah.
He played, and I don't know who you got the locals with, maybe he showed on set here or something, right? Oh, yeah, that thing didn't show up, that's right. So, really, he's gone and we've been rocking and rolling since,